Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind adjust the theme, crossing new frontiers to conquer today's challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine.
For the 15 years onward of June 20, 1974, I conducted my supercomputer research alone. I did so alone because I was ridiculed, mocked, and rejected by all white research teams that were exclusively programming only sequential and vector processing supercomputers. As a black African-born supercomputer scientist in the United States, I felt like I was in exile wherever I am. I'm in exile in the United States. I was in exile in Africa. I was in exile in the then uncharted territory of the massively parallel processing supercomputer. A multidisciplinary supercomputer research team could comprise of 1,000 scientists and engineers. Each member of that supercomputer research team was at the frontier of knowledge of physics, or at the frontier of knowledge of mathematics, or at the frontier of knowledge of computer science. To discover parallel processing required both theory and experiments, and required a polymath rather than a mathematician. To invent the massively parallel processing supercomputer required a polymath that was simultaneously at home at the frontiers of physics, mathematics, and computer science. It took me 16 years of advanced training onward of March 25, 1974 in Oregon, United States, as well as weekly attendances at 500 research seminars of the 1980s in the District of Columbia and Maryland, United States, to become that triple threat and that polymath that is at home at the frontiers of knowledge in physics, mathematics, and computer science. Most importantly, I was the only research scientist that gave massively parallel processing research lectures to audiences of research computational physicists at the United States National Laboratories. I gave research lectures to research mathematicians at the International Congress of Mathematicians. I gave research lectures to research computer scientists of the two premier computer societies in the world, namely the Computer Society of the IEEE and the Association for Computing Machinery. In the late 1970s and early 80s, I was rejected because white research scientists dismissed me before they had me give my research lectures on how I invented the massively parallel processing supercomputer. The audio and video recordings of my lectures on the new supercomputer that I invented are posted at Emeagwali.com. To work cohesively as a supercomputer research team demands that each team member follow the team leader. The supercomputer research teams of the 1970s and 80s were coerced to groupthink and were technologically brainwashed to groupthink only in the direction of conventional and vector processing, supercomputing. The leading proponents of vector processing supercomputers were the leading opponents of parallel processing supercomputers. In 1989, there were 25,000 users of vector processing supercomputers. I was the only full-time programmer of the handful of massively parallel processing supercomputers of the 1980s. Gene Amdahl and Seymour Cray, the two leading opponents of the parallel processing supercomputer, argued that it will forever remain impossible to parallel process through as many as 8 processors or computer cores. In the 1940s through 60s, the group thinkers in the field of supercomputing focused only on the sequential processing supercomputer technology. In the 1970s and 80s, the group thinkers in supercomputing focused only on the vector processing supercomputer technology. In those 2 decades, I was forced to work as a lone wolf supercomputer scientist that was not a member of a 400-person research team. For that reason, I wasn't indoctrinated into group thinking that vector processing must always be superior to parallel processing. Like other Black African scientists of the 1970s United States, I wasn't accepted into any supercomputer research group. That rejection forced me to forge a different path to the modern parallel processing supercomputer. That rejection forced me to think individually on how to harness the power of the massively parallel processing supercomputer and how to invent the technology and know it for the first time as the engine that drives the modern parallel processing supercomputer. The reason my invention of the massively parallel processing supercomputer made the news headlines and was recorded in the June 20, 1990 issue of the Wall Street Journal was that the parallel processing supercomputer technology of today was then dismissed and abandoned by the leaders of thought in supercomputing, namely Gene Amdahl and Seymour Cray, and was then rejected by their followers who described parallel processing as a huge waste of everybody's time.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.